What's up, everyone? Welcome into the All 22 NFL Show, the official channel of the All 22 Fantasy Football platform. It's the only fantasy football game with full 53-man rosters, including offensive linemen, where you get to choose personnel packages and have access to PFF grading and advanced stats to make decisions each week. To learn more and sign up, go to all-22.com. Ray, break the big news for everybody.
Yeah, so the NFL has denied entry into the supplemental draft by Brendan Sorsby. So the NFL will now not hold a supplemental draft this year, which it hasn't for a few years now. But everyone had kind of assumed that Brendan Sorsby would just go to the supplemental draft now after he dropped his lawsuit against the NCAA for filing an injunction to allow him to play after he was suspended for gambling on his own team, among many other things. So in order to be eligible for the supplemental draft, he had to drop his suit. He saw that as a last resort after some back and forth in court with the Big 12 and other schools and Texas Tech. And the NFL sent a letter saying, hey, buddy, we're not your backup plan. We're not your fallback plan. This is the National Football League. You don't get to just, try to, circumvent consequences for your own actions. And then if that fails, you could just kind of fall into the National Football League, the shield. So, the NFL just denied his request, and he is now no longer eligible into the supplemental draft. So he cannot play football, at least in North America, as far as I know, until, or I should say the United States of America. I'm not sure about Canada and how that will all work. But until this 2027 NFL draft, if he decides to declare for that, which I assume he will attempt to anyway, he's now just left out in the cold. So, Chris, I know you were excited. We did mention last episode, like, hey, just because he applied for the supplemental draft doesn't mean that it's just going to happen, right? We said wait and see what the NFL does here. But I know you were excited. You wanted to see Brendan Sorsby in the NFL, I think, this summer in training camps. So what are your thoughts? I feel like you're upset about this.
I'm a little upset. And that was your take last time. You kind of hit it on the head last time. You were like, listen, just because he doesn't go back to college doesn't mean the NFL is going to say, okay, come play. Right. I'm a little upset just because, again, his issues were not while he was an employee of the NFL. So I don't necessarily understand why they're making this kind of statement. Because again, this is the NFL who allows you to do 50,000 other crimes and come to work every day, right? So we're nitpicking here. And I understand that gambling does, it could potentially disrupt the structure of the game and people's belief in the game and people's ability to themselves gamble on the game with confidence that games aren't being rigged. I understand all of that. But to me, what I was thinking is this is the NFL saying, we asked the teams and they don't really think this is worth it, right? And like maybe that's really what happened is, you go to 32 teams and you say, hey, is anybody going to bid on this guy? And everybody said no, right? Like we're good. And if that's the case, then I think that's fine. But that's not really the statement that the NFL came out with.
So I believe it was Andrew Brandt who brought this up on the Business of Sports podcast, which is a phenomenal show. If you're not familiar, or if anyone is not familiar, I will recommend it. He's not a sponsor, though that'd be pretty awesome if he was. But he made mention of over the last couple years that quietly the NFL did institute some language to the effect of the ability to review on a case-by-case basis entrance into the league and deem whether or not punishment was appropriate. So in other words, if you were facing some sort of suspension in college and you entered the NFL, whether through the supplemental draft, the NFL draft, or as an employee, aka coach like Jim Harbaugh, that they on a case-by-case basis would review and say, hey, you may face punishment here by the NFL too. You don't just completely erase that by jumping up a level into the National Football League. To date, I don't believe that has been exercised, but they did give themselves that bit of leeway. Curiously, they didn't really, do that with Jim Harbaugh. as an active NFL head coach, but nonetheless, they do have that ability. And I think if you give the NFL the opportunity for just a pure layup, right? To come down hard on the integrity of the game and, protecting the shield and all that good stuff, they're just going to take it. You just handed it to them on a silver platter. It is the easiest of wins that they could possibly have. So, yeah, I think he walked into just a complete bear trap there, and now he's stuck, literally stuck. He might go to Canada, I guess, for a year and see what happens before next year's draft. But this was a layup for the NFL, and whether they decided to let him in and then could enact some sort of punishment after he was a member of the National Football League, or just outright say no, they did give themselves the latitude to basically smack him down, and that's what they did.
Listen, I think something I need to remind myself at times is the NFL and the NCAA are essentially extensions of each other, right? And they have this massive mutual agreement of how they should behave, which allows both to kind of flourish in their own rights. And again, they support each other. I think the NCAA is like one of the most crooked businesses out there. So I don't know how great I feel about that, right? And I think that the NFL allowing gambling, or the United States to allow gambling to be a thing, and the NFL allowing gambling on NFL games really makes this, that they're a little bit of a corrupt organization themselves, right? Like it's really interesting, right? And again, like Jamison Williams got suspended for gambling, was that a couple of years ago? But his was like a few games, right? So like for them to just say, this is such a unique situation that we're not even going to allow you to be drafted into the NFL, just seems bizarre to me, right? It just seems a little bit crazy. It seems like we're nitpicking like crazy. And again, I understand there's circumstances. He bet on his own team to lose games. That's massive, especially when you're a quarterback.
Well, I think just the under. Active. I don't think to lose the game, but he did bet the under on one.
The
of them.
under.
Like,
I don't think he was active in those games, right?
Right.
No, so he wasn't active. He couldn't necessarily impact the outcome of those games. But I really think this is the NFL saying, quarterbacks, you guys can impact games that way, and we're not going to have any of that, right? So and this is what I don't like, that a receiver may be treated differently than a quarterback, who might be treated differently than an edge rusher. Like, where do we draw the line on this, right? How can we just essentially say, Brendan Sorsby, your crimes are too big. The NFL doesn't want you to work here. We're not inviting you to play. To me, it seems very nitpicky, and I don't really understand how they can do that. If I was Brendan Sorsby, I would probably have a lawsuit against the NFL saying, you were impeding my rights to earn a living, and you didn't for Jamison Williams, and you didn't for all these other guys. So why me, right? It would be an instant lawsuit against the NFL.
I'm sure he will, and that's probably why people are so frustrated with him to begin with. So, but two things.
Wait. You think he's in the wrong for doing that?
I'm going to get there in a second. Okay. The Jamison Williams thing, he placed bets in a team facility, but it was not on football games. It was not on the NFL. So the NFL can draw the line and say, like, yes, he was suspended, but there's a difference in betting on the World Cup from your position meeting room as opposed to betting on your own team's games. And you don't know how large those bets are. I mean, he could, you could place a $20,000 bet or something and slip $7,000 to who is playing in the game to just, don't score that extra touchdown, just kind of sit on it late in the game, audible to a dive play or something. And let's just get out of here with the win and we both make money. So I get the levels to that where the NFL can say, hey,
but listen,
this is too
I
far.
was using one example of Jamison Williams, who, to your point, did not bet on football, but there have been players that have bet on football and have not been given year-long suspensions.
Well, technically he wasn't given a year-long suspension. He just wasn't
which is
invited
in
into
my
the
opinion even worse.
Draft.
Because again, I think that's why Sorsby's gonna have a lawsuit where he can go and say, again, you're impeding my right to make a living, If a team wants to draft me and then you want to suspend me, that's within the NFL's rights, right? But to not allow me to make a living, I think he has every right for that argument.
I'm sure that'll be his argument. I'm sure that.
While again, I think this dude sucks, and like what he did is terrible, and I don't think it's great. I was so excited for the Cowboys to draft him, and I was so excited.
That was never going to happen. But the other thing is, like, yes, like he has the right to sue and whatever else, but the thing is, and you know me, I'm all about like the NFL is like a soulless just corporation of like vampires, and we love their product and love the NFL and whatever, but they can be soulless, but they are human beings. And if you are going to treat them like a fallback option, if they have the avenue to backhand you and set you straight, they're going to do it. And I think as a whole, the world, not just America, but like the world is pretty sick and tired of people with means being brats and then getting away with it by just throwing money at the problem and filing lawsuits and getting away with just being a brat. The nicest word I could possibly come up with. People are sick and tired of that. They don't want to see somebody place thousands of bets on their own sport, on their own team, and clearly just have blatant disregard for rules, get paid millions of dollars in college while doing so, and then just latch themselves onto some overzealous billionaire who's just bankrolling his favorite college football team to try to buy a championship, and just find some judge that says, yeah, I like this team too, so I'm going to just let you not follow the rules and file an injunction and let you play because I root for the Texas Tech Red Raiders, or this is my district and I want to stay popular in here. So we're just going to forego all the consequences of your actions and you're going to be allowed to play. Like, people are sick and tired of watching that in some form or another in pretty much every walk of life. So they're all just coming together saying, no, screw you. I don't feel sorry for you. You're still getting paid. You still got paid at least a couple $1 million from Texas Tech for being on their roster for about 120 days and not playing a down for them. And now you just get to sit back like, they're tired of it. And so the NFL is still made up of human beings who feel these same feelings, who are still watching this all unfold. And they don't want this bag of excrement to be dumped on their front porch and just have to accept it because, oh, people are interested in a supplemental draft this year. Wouldn't that be something? Like, no. They're like, no, you're going to go back to the back of the line. You're going to wait till next year and go to the regular draft like everyone else. And if you're so, worried about your mental health and all this other stuff that you wanted to throw out there as some sort of sympathy card, you now have plenty of time to fully address your issues and come back as a reformed human being. There's it's an easy win for the NFL because everyone is fed up with this. And this is why Brendan Sorsby is going to find zero sympathy from pretty much anybody, even those who were suspended by the NFL for gambling in some form or fashion.
Listen, man, you're right, but you're also so wrong because the NFL is so much more of an evil conglomerate than you're giving. Like, why am I happy for them doing that, right? Like, this is the people that every single year draft people with domestic. Tyreek Hill got drafted, dude. He had like domestic abuse, like criminal charges against him in the moment that he was drafted, right? And they let him play an entire career after so many different instances where he beat a child. Okay. Like, we're talking about people that are not good individuals. And the NFL just says, they're good at football, but if Brandon Sorsby was Arch Manning, I guarantee he'd be playing in the NFL next year. Okay. Ooh. Like, that's the issue that I have, is they picked and choose when to yield this little power that they have to say Brandon Sorsby is a nobody. We're not going to let it slide. But guess what? They let it slide with everyone else. I don't feel bad for the NFL either. And that's why I'm sitting here today going, Brendan Sorsby has a right to play, has a right to get drafted. And if you want to suspend him, but not giving him the opportunity to get drafted, to me, is against the rights that he should have as a man and an individual who has not been criminally prosecuted for a crime. And the NFL has no right to suspend him for crimes that he committed potentially, and again, hasn't been charged for. The NFL never suspends somebody before a charge is laid out by the law, right? So like all of a sudden they're just doing that again. Like this is just, there's one evil person against a conglomerate of probably evil people, and I just can't allow it. And listen, I have another kind of curveball where we could take this conversation. I don't know if we want to just hang it up. You tell me.
Oh, I love it. I'm all for it. Just, yeah, let's do it.
Sports fans learned something the past month. When the Knicks won the NBA championship, the sports world learned something, okay? The best product on the field is the one where they play the game the right way. The New York Knicks played the best game of team basketball that I've seen in years, Ray. There was not a moment where it was like individual one-on-one, taking it to the lane every single time, trying to create one-on-one mismatches. The Knicks played team basketball. They passed the ball. They played defense. When was the last time that we saw like an NFL team play that way, right? It was the Seahawks. The Seahawks played that way. They won the Super Bowl by playing the right way. But unfortunately, the team that they played against wasn't necessarily playing that same kind of football, right? And I just think that having great matchups is so important when there's two teams playing the game the right way. Like, again, we talked about it, but I think New England just skated by in the playoffs and they got a lot of luck handed to them. And it created like a really disappointing Super Bowl matchup. In my opinion, it really did. We knew the outcome before the game started. Again, if the Broncos had stayed healthy, it would have been a much better game. But that's the issue that the NFL, I think, needs to solve for. And I think all sports fans are now aware. We want to see the best matchups, and we want to see the two teams out there being teams that play the right way. And it goes back to the conversation where I am so sick of guys like Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown. And that's another reason I'm calling out the Patriots. Like, they go and trade for A.J. Brown. I'm so sick of individuals like that who are crybabies, who all they do is they want the ball, that just don't play team football. Listen, the reason you weren't getting the ball for the Eagles is because the best thing for the Eagles was for you not to get the ball. You were better being a distraction, okay? That's the way, right? We never hear Jamar Chase in a game where T. Higgins goes off saying, I should have got the ball more, because they win those games. It is extremely frustrating that we continue. And again, this is the issue with the NFL. We continue to give players like that all the opportunity in the world just because they're talented. And guess what? As fans, we don't care. We want to see the best product on the field. The Knicks showed us the best product. They really did. Let's continue to put that on the field. Whether it's basketball, football, baseball, whatever it is, we just want to see good sports being played the right way. Can that happen in football, Ray?
Well, Brendan Sorsby's a crybaby, so I don't understand how that. I don't think he solves that problem.
He doesn't, but we're nitpicking. That's the point.
Yeah, the NFL picks and chooses, but because Tyreek Hill getting arrested isn't going to cost them potentially billions of dollars, like a compromised game after the fact if they find out that a starting quarterback was on the take would. And that's all it is. They're protecting their money, and that's what it comes down to, of course. But again, they can protect their money, and it's not going to end up in any sympathy for Brendan Sorsby. It's his fault that he got convicted yet.
He hasn't been convicted.
He gambled. It's against.
Why isn't he in prison? Why isn't he going to prison?
Because he was being bankrolled by the guy that was paying him to play for Texas Tech is the same guy that gave donations to the judge that gave him an injunction against the NCAA to play. So because again, all back to money, the money was flowing to the people that would prosecute him for this, but instead they were letting him circumvent NCAA rules because they were being paid by the guy that was paying him to play for Texas Tech, allegedly.
Listen, man. We as fans, let's go convict the guy, right? If we think that he was gambling as an insider, there's rules against this. There's laws against this. Put him in prison. Then the NFL can say, We do not want you to play in the NFL because you are a convicted felon doing something that's detrimental to the safety of our game. But until then, they have no right to do that. Anyway, I think that's enough for this episode. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. If you haven't yet, hit like, hit subscribe wherever you're watching or listening to the podcast, and give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and X at all22_PFF. Have a great rest of your day.
Go, go.